This is Tony Schmaltz. You can find me at TonySchmaltz.com, and you are listening to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith. And I'm here to remind you to wake the bleep up.
You like that? I
Mhm.
see. I said beep. You said bleep.
It's technically bleep, but yeah.
I get it. No, you found my error. Good job.
Yeah.
Well done. All right. So I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
Yep.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Steve Acho, thank you very much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you, sir. It's going great today. Thanks.
So you are at steveacho.com. Talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business and your life today.
Wow. Well, that's actually one of the hardest questions and for me to answer, which is always the first question that people ask when they first meet you, which is, what do you do?
Right.
And it's not that uncommon, right? In this day and age, we all do lots of different
That's
things.
how we identify. Right?
Yeah. It's like too broad to be categorized. I'm not a finance guy. I'm not a this. I'm not a that. And so
You're a human being is what you are.
Yes, being, and then I'm doing a bunch of stuff, right?
Exactly.
I'm a human doing a bunch of stuff.
Right.
So what I'm excited about, literally, I can say depends on the day. So it just so happens that today, I have a new song coming out on Spotify. So I've been doing music for about 20 years. I'm professionally, but I'm a complete hack. I've never taken lessons, never learned to read music.
Right.
I have about now, I think that will be my 181st song or something like that. That's out on all the platforms.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough to have over 50, close to 60 million streams across all the platforms on my music. But so I have a cover song that's coming out tomorrow. I'm also very excited about, and this is also in the music space, a song that I wrote and recorded and have not yet released. And it's called Unity. And I wrote that song because I've shared that song and the lyrics with a handful of people. And I wanted to spread this meme, if you will, because I see, and this is not a political stance or any kind of ideology. It's just that I see the world today. It seems easy for people to find unity, solidarity with other people, but the glue that holds them together seems to be the commonality of who they hate. And I think there's and that's unity, right? You can unify around the people or the ideas that. But I just feel like there's a better way to get along with our 8 billion neighbors. And so I wrote this song called Unity, and the idea of it's really clear in the lyrics, but it's just like, can you stand for what you believe in without being anti-other? Can you be proud of who you are without being anti-other? So what I've been doing is, which is not normally done in the music business, is doing kind of an affiliate marketing type thing and saying, I would like to split all of the proceeds with this to some organization or charity, of course, for whom that is totally brand consistent and convergent, and they believe this message.
I like
and again, I'm not announcing that this happened, but Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter has a charity. She's heard the song and loves it. And I will be talking today or tomorrow about her possibly using it as a theme song. Now, I don't know if that'll happen, but I'm really excited to
That's an exciting opportunity, whether or not it works out or not.
Exactly. Something good will come of it. So I'm excited about that. I just had a meeting yesterday, and I'm likely to be doing my first TED Talk, and that will be here in Detroit.
Congratulations.
Maybe. Thank you. I'm excited. I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And it may be, I talked to one of the organizers, it may actually be around that song, with that song being the end of kind of the spiel, but really to push this message. So again, it's, the things that give me fulfillment are just feeling like I'm moving forward and being useful to as many people as possible. That's kind of my own report card. And then last thing I'll say, just because it happens to be today, in an hour from now.
Okay.
I probably have one of the most important calls of my IT services career.
Wow.
My partner, Elizabeth Newbold, and I have a company called Solstice Consulting Group,
Wow.
and we sell technology consulting and staffing for companies like GM and Amazon and Apple and the federal government. And we're going to be on a pretty big call soon with possibly, if it all goes well, which I don't know what the probability is, but it would immediately quadruple the size of that company. So again, I'm excited at the opportunity. I do so many things. I have
awesome,
so many ideas.
and scary at once.
It's scary. And you know what? I always say, like, I have lots of ideas and most of them are not good, but they're all tests. Sure. I have lots of opportunities. Most of them don't pan out, but you only need a few. Yeah. So I'm kind of a delusional optimist. So that's what I'm excited about.
You need to be a delusional optimist if you want to be an entrepreneur.
I really think
say like an NFL quarterback. You have to believe in yourself when all things say you shouldn't.
Yes. All evidence is to the contrary.
You have to, you have to trust yourself or have faith. One of the other.
So that's just a few things that are exciting today in the moment as we're having this great conversation.
I love it all. Yesterday, I went to the gym and I did my yoga, and on my way out to the car, I may have lost my keys, but that's not the point. I saw a bumper sticker that said, socialism sucks. And I was like, yeah, probably. But why don't you tell me what you like?
Isn't it so interesting? Like,
why do we always go the negative? You know?
Yeah,
I think I kind of know. I think I
back to the point. You can get more applause for pointing out actual problems. Things that suck. Right. Waiting in long lines suck. Who's going to say no? They don't.
Right.
But what is your solution for not standing in long lines or whatever it is that you're upset about? Right. So I'd really like to stay on the positive side. Sounds like you do too.
Yeah, totally. I had this.
Are you a yoga guy?
I love yoga. I love yoga. Yoga is going to be my thing. I like to strip down workouts. So I have a 35 and a 50 kettlebell. That's my gym.
Got it. Yeah. I was hoping by strip down you didn't mean naked yoga, but if you do, I mean,
you do that at home.
No judgment. But it sounds like we're the same. I mean, I really take a minimalist approach.
Right.
I mean, working out, missing a workout for me would be the equivalent of like not brushing my teeth and leaving the house. It just wouldn't happen.
It would be
just
like
part of my identity.
You feel gross. Yes.
Yes. I take one day off a week, and on that day of not, quote, training or doing MMA or weight kettlebells or any kind of exercises like that, I actually walk 5 miles and listen to a podcast or do nothing.
You have to move.
Just walk.
Yeah.
And on that day, actually, I feel like I have the least energy, and it's not about guilt. It's not because I think I'm going to turn into a fat guy.
Right.
It's just how I feel in my body. So
it's
part of my life.
I think that whole like Russian kind of kettlebell, the Pavel. Yeah. He's all about like, you don't want to work out so hard that you can't work out every day. I like that philosophy because working out is great. But if you go heavy, you're going to build muscle,
tear down stuff and have a bunch of surgeries like me.
Totally. Anyway,
not sustainable.
Right. So anyway, I wish there was more people into the Russian style of strength training. But anyway, so this is Vroom Vroom Veer, Steve. We've been screwing around. We got to go back in time and talk about your life, which is great.
Sure.
So, and you've had a lot of Vrooms and Veers. So where did you grow up?
So I am here in Detroit, Michigan area. I was born here, raised here.
Wow.
Have always been here. I did my undergrad at Oakland University, which is in the area.
Okay.
And I did 1 year of that in Japan. I got, when I was 19, I got accepted on a work study program. So I spent a year in Japan, and I'd already studied a couple of years of Japanese in high school. But as everybody knows, I always joke that my sister took 4 years of French in high school, and then she went to Paris, and I'm pretty sure all she could do is ask how Monique is. It's not practical, right? So I learned that it wasn't practical, and then I really wanted to like quadruple down, and I really got obsessive about it because I was just interested, and I have a good ear. That's the one thing that's built in that allows me to do music or language, or I can mimic accents and stuff.
Sure.
So that's the only inborn talent. It's not like I'm great at language or music or anything else.
Yeah.
I'm a good mimicker. I have a good ear.
Yeah.
And
Japanese people tell me that too. Like when you speak Japanese, you sound Japanese.
I always hear that. I talk to people on the phone, I meet them and they're like, "Oh my God, I was expecting a Japanese person," which is
really wow, huge compliment. Yeah. My wife is like, when she hears a non-Japanese person speaking Japanese, she'll tell me, "Yeah, he's good."
I can actually, I'm sure your wife can, you probably can too. I can tell if somebody speaks, so in Japan, of course, you're speaking Japanese with a lot of people. Some of them are from Brazil, some of them are from like other places. And our common language is Japanese. I can tell the Filipino dialect of Japanese.
Wow.
I can tell the South American dialect, the Brazilian dialect. So I'm like, oh, this person's from Brazil.
Yeah. It's kind of like picking up
from. Hopefully they don't know I'm from America, right?
Right.
That's what I'm hoping.
That's amazing.
So I spent a year there and came back and did like Japanese studies, and then went back to Japan again, but this time in business. And I ended up working in Hiroshima, which is a pretty famous city.
Yeah, sure.
And I worked for Mark Fields, who was then the president of Mazda and became the CEO of Ford Motor Company.
Wow.
And I did my MBA there. So I spent probably 4 years there. And
you were living and working in a Japanese company.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and some of these people, by the way.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
It was tough at the time.
It is very, very hard.
This is like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. They don't not work, and they never sleep.
Well, I always tell my Japanese friends that I was in a meeting
all the time too, and then they go out and drink. I don't even understand how they're not dead. It's like,
it's so paradoxical, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I was in a meeting one time with a guy that was missing the birth of his first child to be in this meeting, and he had slept in a sleeping bag under his desk the previous night. And I just said, I don't want to be the American that judges, and there's no wrong or right, really, maybe.
Right.
But I remember saying, that Japan is the only country in the world that has a word, karoshi, for death from overwork.
Wow.
Anyone else that dies from exhaustion or whatever, you have to explain it in a sentence. But the fact that your country has the word karoshi,
right,
should tell you something. So maybe go see your son, but don't, if you don't want to, like, I don't want to be the jerk. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different work ethic. It's a different mindset. I learned a lot from them, and I missed a lot about America. And it really, as you know, because you've lived in so many different places and been exposed to languages and culture like crazy. It really, if you're the right kind of person who's open to learning, and I'm generally just intellectually curious about everything. So I don't immediately see something that seems weird and say that's weird. My first thought is to be curious about, like, why would they do it that way? And oftentimes I look back at the American way, or whatever my normal way of doing things was, and I think, why do we do it that way?
Yeah,
that's
it is. Yeah. That's where I land too. The curiosity. Yeah. It's not like I want to judge it. I see it. Sure. I have an immediate judgment like you did, but I don't want to express that judgment. I just want to say, how did they get there?
Why
that?
But isn't it interesting when you say, why that? And then you look at your own culture and say, no. Why that?
Exactly.
Like, I'll give you a specific, really dumb example that's not deep philosophically or anything. And there are examples of that. But just for example, like the word for bathroom in Japanese is the room with the bath.
Right.
When we say bathroom, we mean toilet. When someone says, where's the bathroom at a restaurant, they're not looking to take a bath.
Right.
So why do we say that?
Who knows?
Because I remember
just because we do, right?
Just because, right? It's just like, that's what we did. And so like
every country's like that. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you recognize as you travel more and you're exposed to more people that the thing or the things that you grew up with kind of taint your vision of what is quote normal to you. Like
Totally.
a normal marriage is this, and normally you have these things for breakfast, and normally a first meeting is this way, and normally, you just have these certain assumptions that are kind of below the surface of the iceberg that is culture, but it makes up most of it. But the tip of the iceberg is just, oh, they bow instead of shaking hands. Like, where does that come from, right? So I always try to look deeper and understand where the behavior or anything that we can perceive is so different. Like, where did that come from, and what are our assumptions about that, right?
Yeah. That is a rabbit hole that is amazing. So
yeah, we could write a book about that, right? That concept.
I actually really enjoyed a podcast that lasts forever, all about Japan and World War II. It was called it was Hardcore History. And it was like
is that Dan Carlin?
Dan Carlin, Hardcore History. It was something about supernova, Japan, supernova. Anyway, something like that. But it's all about. It's like 5 epically long podcasts.
Yeah,
all about.
I've actually never heard, but
you would love it. You would love it. Because it gives you so much more. You have a lot of aha moments.
Perspective.
Yeah, about where a lot of these things came from. You know,
so cool. Yeah. So I actually did I've written 2 books. One of them is called The Least You Need to Know About Working Effectively with the Japanese. And it's meant to be a very short read. I intentionally called it The Least You Need to Know because I think that when you're explaining concepts,
big rabbit hole.
it certainly can be, right? And what most people are looking for when, I've coached I've done kind of seminars in front of hundreds of people down to like one-on-one executive coaching with Americans that had probably spent more time than me in Japan because they go there every month for 2 weeks or whatever. They've worked for Toyota for 25 years. They come in thinking like, what's this kid going to teach me? And then they leave saying, I really wish I would have been exposed to this earlier. But the way that I think about it is people that want to learn something and want to be productive, or what I would say functional. Like if you're functionally fluent in a language, you can get around. You didn't just memorize a bunch of speeches or words. Then you can't have a conversation. If you're functional, being able to play the guitar, then when you're sitting around the campfire and someone hands you a guitar, you can like do something, right? You don't have to be Ed Sheeran, but you can
you can entertain people. Right? Yeah, you're functional.
Exactly. Right. And so what most people do when they ask for advice, and I get this a lot everywhere I've worked, is like, man, you're a fairly athletic guy. You've always, you look athletic. I know you work out like a crazy person. I don't want to do that, but like, tell me what I need to do. Like, what's the least that, and I know it's like, what's the least I need to know? What people want is the 3x5 card that says,
totally. Yeah.
For example, I know you know this through and through, but when exchanging business cards with a Japanese person, don't just take it and shove it in your pocket.
No.
Because that could be considered rude. Now, I can tell you that, and I can write 10 things on a note card, but then you just have to remember that. So what I do is I kind of divide the book or the session, and I can do this session for 2 hours, or I could literally do it in 20 minutes and say, here's the most important stuff. But it's going to start with an understanding of the perspective that is generally attributed to most Japanese people most of the time. Of course, not everything is a stereotype, right? But there are generalities that you can guess. Often Americans value freedom and independence and all these things. And in general, Japanese people value this. And here is how it is exhibited in behavior. And so my thought is the least you really need to know is not the tips. I'll get to the tips. That's going to be 20% of it. But 80% of it is understanding the why behind really anything that you want to learn and become functional in. You will discover your own what to do about it. So if I just tell you do 10 push-ups and then take a break and do 10 more push-ups and then take a break and do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday and call me, that might be the right thing for some person. But if I help them understand that, like, for example, muscle is the engine that burns fat.
Right.
You're not going to overnight have veins popping out of your neck, just like you didn't overnight get a beer belly, right? It takes time. and here's what you do. And if you want to speed it up. So I give them like this overview, and then I give them the tips.
Sure.
Because I believe that the least you really need to know is to have an understanding and appreciation for, in this case, the culture.
Right.
And appreciate doesn't have to mean agree. There's things that I really personally dislike about the Japanese culture.
Sure.
And there are things that I dislike about the American culture that I wish we could import.
Right.
And, I try to be an amalgamation of all, great things that I've learned from anyone, anywhere. Right.
Sure. Sure. Wow. Yeah. I love the fact that like you've just got this like wealth of sort of like diverse experience. We don't see the polymath, the Renaissance man so much anymore. Yeah. So that's awesome. And, me spending a lot of time in Japan, I learned most of my Japanese. I did take like 1 or 2 classes, like my first assignment in Japan way back when in 1988.
Great. Yep.
But like I said, I think in the intro, I probably speak like 3-year-old Japanese. Like I can kind of make sentences, right? But I
actually created a methodology that I copyrighted. It's called Fast Track. I'm not advertising it anywhere. There's nothing to buy.
Right.
But I thought about, when I created it, tech enabling it, and talked to a couple companies and just decided that you'd really have to be a lunatic like me to, I think most people think that they can get language learning for free through Duolingo or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they probably wouldn't pay for it. So probably a bad business model, but regardless, an amazing methodology that I tested on myself. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'm a lunatic. Maybe it's a certain way of learning. Maybe it's a certain drive that I have that most people wouldn't. Yeah. So I tested it on 12 people. Half of them were in Japan, American or European, native English speakers who were married to Japanese, who were there for longer than me. And it was like they got a shot. And all of a sudden, it just And so I've taught this to U.S. military. I've taught this to language teachers. It's really cool. Because it really... when you feel progress, you'll continue with something, right? But if you take 6 months worth of Japanese, and I'm like, hey, Jeffrey, this is my Japanese friend. You've been doing Japanese for like a half a year, right? And then, you're like, hajimemashite. And that's all you have. You have like, nice to meet you. And then you're done. And then you're like, how much is that ashtray, or whatever random words you use. You're going to feel like that was all a waste. And you certainly don't feel fulfilled, like you're making progress. So you're going to quit. And so the method is really based on a persona of who you are, the environment you're in, what kinds of conversations you're likely to get into after the first 5 minutes, which is scripted. Nice to meet you. What's your name? Where are you from? First you do that. But past that, if you're, a single man that's 45 years old, living in Japan and working at a manufacturing facility during the day and going out and going to concerts and movies at night, there's a certain predictable kind of vocabulary and conversations that you're going to get into. And that's where you start, because that's going to keep repeating itself. If you're a housewife who's American, who is taking their kids to the international school and interacting with the Japanese teacher, the obviously like the native Japanese speaker, and then while her kids are at school, she wants to go play tennis with her friends. But she just doesn't know how to communicate, so it stops it. Like, those are two different people. There is no Japanese for housewives or Japanese for busy people. Right. There's just Japanese, and just like there is English, right? And so my English is decent. I learn more of it all the time. I try and really not use big words, but I try and use exact words. So whether you agree with me or not, at least I'm articulating what I really believe and what I feel. And so I try to get better at that. But even me, like, I could be in a meeting about astrophysics and I would not contribute very much. I probably understand more than a non-native English speaker. I'm not sure I would be very useful.
Totally. I heard,
or invited.
I think it was Tim Ferriss, because he's a big Japan
for
guy.
Sure.
And he laid out like this whole, like, there's about like 3,000-ish general kind of like Japanese words that you need to just
I think
be
it's
conversationalist.
1260 or 1290.
Okay.
Well, no, those are the Joyo kanji. Those are the so if you know these 1200 and some characters, you can read a newspaper.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And 1200 is,
That's a lot.
that's but it's a lot, but it's an approachable
number. It's not the whole language. Right.
It's certainly not. I mean, that's one of the things when I think about and I talk about and I coach people on the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle, and how it shows up in all areas of your life. One area where I think it's really important to think about, and I use this language learning as an example. So there are 250,000 words in the English language, all right, if you count tenses and derivatives.
Sure.
So now just imagine yourself being a Chinese person, growing up in China, having no exposure to English. You're moving to some city in America. You're going to be expected to speak English. You're starting at zero, and all you know is there's 250,000 words.
Right.
You then find out that even educated people with advanced degrees who communicate for a living like you and I do, only use about 1,000 words. Okay. Not that we only know 1,000 words.
Right.
We only use 1,000 words 99% of the time.
Right.
That already, before you even learn how to say hello and yes and no and where's the bathroom and all the important stuff.
Right.
It already makes it more approachable. So just knowing that you could have the same toolkit as a native speaker like me with dozens or hundreds of words.
Right.
That's a mindset shift right there. That's something.
It's approachable. It
makes it approachable.
It becomes doable, I can
instead
do that.
Of daunting.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like, right.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Because it is. I mean, it's obviously like it's very it's difficult to be an adult who's been communicating all their lives and all of our lives in whatever our native language is, and then just, screw up on saying hello. Like that's kind of knocks your ego down a couple notches.
I don't want to knock on Duolingo, but I tried Duolingo and I did it for a very long time, maybe like 6 months-ish. Mm-hmm. And I think I picked up some vocabulary, but
yeah, I'm happy to knock on it, but you go ahead first.
I didn't really feel like I was learning. I was just playing a game. Yeah. Does that make sense? Did you get that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've tested a lot of these things. That was my impression too.
It was fun.
I love what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it was fun.
They gamify it.
Yeah. But it didn't really, I didn't feel like I was learning, if that makes any sense. Yeah. I would rather just like, if I'm going to spend that time, even if it's only 15 minutes or 5 minutes a day, I want to see progress, right? I want to have my wife come home and know a new word.
Hey, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's perfectly, that, to be honest, that is the center of the bullseye of what I preach and practice. And when I do keynote speeches, that really is what it's all about is, I call it a hack, but really what it is just simplifying and asking smart questions and setting smart goals.
Yeah.
Because when you say, I don't feel like I'm making progress on Duolingo or whatever, you could take any book.
Right.
It's like, imagine the personas of the two people that I just mentioned. So the single male who works at a manufacturing facility and goes out and does whatever he does at night. And then the housewife who's an American mother who has to, maybe she wants to do ikebana, flower arranging, but she's going to be exposed to different vocabulary. And so if I learn the words for different flowers and all the details of that, I'm very likely to just forget them and say, oh, I'm bad at language. Japanese isn't for me.
Right.
The flashcards just didn't work. Whereas the way that I train people who have some understanding of a language like Japanese or English or whatever, is I say, okay, so like first take me through where you usually have a problem. Where are you not confident and what it is?
Right.
But I'll actually have them say, and this part kind of requires that you are immersed, right? So I was living in Japan. Every email, fax at the time, meeting, phone call, everything was in Japanese. So I was always at my linguistic breakdown.
Right.
I was fine. I made 100 mistakes a day, but I just didn't want to make the same mistakes.
Right.
And I thought, how dumb is it of me if I know that I have to facilitate a meeting today and welcome everybody and say this set of things and set the stage for what's going to happen, I'm likely going to have to do it again. I'm going to get it really good tomorrow. And then the next time I do it, it's not looking up like, oh, what was the word for pink ashtray?
Right.
It's probably not going to come up. And if it does, I'll learn it then.
Right.
But it's very likely that I will have to facilitate another meeting and start out by saying, minasan, o isogashi tokoro arigatou gozaimasu, whatever the phrases that are so common.
You can script it out, you know.
There's so much that you can script out. And so that's why I think it's not really Duolingo's fault. It's kind of like, you can't fault anybody so here's my kind of backstory that I think you'll be interested in with music.
Sure.
So I always loved music as a kid. I listened to it. I never thought about doing it. I just listened to the Beatles and the music my parents listened to. So my cousin played piano, and I remember he was just jamming this song, and I was singing along to it. It was a Beatles song, and I'm like, I want to be able to do that. And I convinced my mom to sign me up for the Super Saturday class. So it was 10 weeks, 1 hour per week on Saturday mornings. Like I was 7, I think. I was going to skip cartoons for this. Like this was serious. So I show up.
That's a big commitment for a 7-year-old.
Absolutely. Well, for me, especially. I would wake up early.
Yeah, me too.
So I go to the first class. I'm the youngest one there by a fair amount. The teacher is a very accomplished classical guitar and piano teacher. He talked for 35, 40 minutes about just music theory and major and minor scales and chord progressions and stuff that just sounded like, like Greek to me. And some of it still does. I heard Charlie Brown's Teacher. And then we were allowed to finally sit at the piano, and I think we started to play a scale, but it was like 45 minutes in before we could touch the piano, and it was like, no, you have to sit this way. No, your back has to be this way. And again, I'm not knocking any of that stuff because I think the attributes of anything that you want to learn are really important, right? But here's the story. I left that class in tears and absolutely positive. That was the first and last music class I ever took. I quit.
Right.
And I left with this self-limiting belief that continued for a decade and that constantly came up again and confirmed my bias that I was not smart enough to understand music, and I certainly wasn't capable of being able to do music. So I was done. I was done thinking about it, right?
Right.
At 17,
like, if that's it, I can't do that. I'm not doing it. Yeah.
And I also felt like, especially as a kid, like when you feel like everyone else gets it but you, like I was fighting back tears already and we hadn't even done anything, right? Now, everyone might have gone into that class with a different goal, but nobody ever asked me, why are you here? What do you want to be able to do? I wish that teacher would have taken me aside. But what ended up happening is for 10 years, I just assumed I couldn't do it. I had friends that did it like professionally. They were getting paid in high school to play music.
Wow.
Yeah. So my parents took my sister and I to a Billy Joel concert, and he was standing up at the piano and playing. And I just thought that was so cool. And I went back and we had, remember albums? So I was playing Billy Joel albums and
45s and LPs.
For those of you younger people, never mind. It's how us old people used to consume music. Yeah. And so I have a good ear. So I would just play along with 2 fingers and 3 fingers and eventually all of them and just obsess over it. And then I went to my friend who's a musician and I was like, I told him the story of how I took this class. And I'm like, maybe my brain's just not meant to understand it. And he was like, dude, you're totally overcomplicating this. Like, let me show you. A chord is made up of 3 or more notes.
Right.
If you just learn 4 chords, you can play 500 songs. If you learn 5 chords, you can play triple as many. Watch, just memorize these chord charts. He gave them to me. I went away, and within a month, I was playing 50 different songs.
Wow.
Never learned to read music. Never. I still don't know how to. I wouldn't pass a 3rd grade music.
There's a lot of professional musicians that don't read.
Yeah,
that
for
don't
sure.
Sight read. They just play by ear. They just learn the way you learn, and they just play. Right now,
and we might not be able to.
Probably not doing like the like they're not in an orchestra.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's okay. Most people aren't in orchestras. Yeah,
that's right. And if you want to be, that's fine. I just think that's a different path. So that's why I always say when I think about people saying, I tried a diet and it didn't work. I tried a means of exercise and it didn't work. I tried to learn to speak Spanish and it didn't work. I first want to make sure that they have a goal the SMART goals that everybody repeats,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound, right?
Right.
So that's a good kind of methodology for setting a goal. But I don't think people really give thought to what is relevant and truly for them. So as an example, most people will say, I want to lose weight.
Right.
And I believe that 90% of people that say that could care less what they weigh. What they really mean is, I want to look great in a bathing suit or a
They want to look
bikini.
sexy. Let's just
Whatever
say
it
They
is,
just want to
that's
look
probably
sexy.
what
Yeah.
they mean, even if
Right.
it's feel better too, or fit into clothes that I can't
Right.
fit into. But that's the measure. So own it. So say that. If you want to
Yeah.
look great naked, say that.
Right.
Take pictures of yourself, set them aside, go do the thing,
Right.
and then go see if the next pictures 2 or 3 weeks later
Yeah.
look different, right? I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
there's a slide that I use that I love, to kind of illustrate this point. It's a great before and after picture. This woman, everyone's seen a million before and after pictures, but this one I use because in the before picture, the woman's 135 pounds. In the after picture, she's still 135 pounds, but they look like different people. So
Totally.
the point is, had she set a specific, measurable, all that
Right.
stuff,
Right. Right.
saying, I want to lose 10 pounds by this date, she would have failed and stopped. But she knew
Right.
enough to say, now she went from like having quite a bit of body fat
Right.
to being like, like looking like a muscle.
Yeah.
What do you call like and not everybody wants to look like a power
Bodybuilder. Right. Right.
athlete or a bodybuilder,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm not suggesting that. But again, like this is true
That's a
for,
good goal. Right.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just,
And it's a
it's like,
frame for your mind that you can't argue with once you find that thing that you actually want.
and you should own it instead
Yeah.
of just repeating the stuff that's
Yeah.
popular,
Like
right?
I
And
just
that,
heard this. I think she's an MD, and she was like, protein forward diet. It's a lot like slow carb, right?
sure, like Tim's
And
thing.
yeah. And then the other thing is resistance training at least 3 times a week.
No question.
And then she starts talking.
That right there is the least you need to know,
Yeah,
by the way.
right.
You just said.
Yeah. And I'm like, but why? And she's like, because it's body armor against breaking a hip when you get to your 70s and 80s. It's like every time you injure yourself, if you
Yeah.
have this skeletal muscle that's healthy and strong, you've got a longer life and a healthier life.
No question.
Right.
No question.
And that is a great frame. It's like, do I need to be sexy? No, I don't need to be sexy. Do you want body armor to live a long, healthy life?
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad just broke his hip. Right.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough injury.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, it's like if someone says, I want to look sexy and that's their goal, no judgment, just own that goal.
Totally.
But then the path to getting to that is going to be different than if you had a different goal. So
Right.
almost like labor over the goal. I just read one of my good friends, Josh Linkner, is like a 3 times New York Times bestseller. He's one of the most booked keynote speakers on innovation, just a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
And he told me this story of, I guess in the late 60s, I think it was, when Russia and the US were kind of arm wrestling each other for who could get to the moon first.
Yeah.
NASA had this budget because they wanted their astronauts to be able to take notes, but they realized that pens didn't work in zero gravity.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So they had this budget, and the goal, of course, was to create a pen that worked in zero gravity, right?
Sure.
The Russians, on the other hand, gave their astronauts 3-cent pencils. Done. Bad goal, bad question.
They actually made the pen though.
They did.
And it worked.
I don't want to know what the budget was. Because our parents paid for that.
Yeah.
But it's such a salient example of a huge organization with millions and even billions in budget.
Wrong
where
goal.
you can go wrong at the first step, even if you follow the SMART objectives.
Yeah.
I'm Steve and I weigh 180 pounds, and by October 1st, I'm going to weigh 160. Like, fine. I checked all the boxes of SMART.
Right.
But that's not really what I want to do in order to be fulfilled, right?
Right. Spend more time figuring out what you actually want.
And own it.
Yeah, and own it. Bill Gates did something very similar. He spent hundreds of millions of dollars building this like portable, like wastewater processing thing where it would actually burn and turn poop and pee into dust. And I'm like, how about a composting toilet?
Yeah. Right.
That costs $700.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the same
like
idea
a smart enough guy to figure that out.
Pencil. Well, I get it. If you ask Bill Gates how to solve a problem, he's going to use technology kind of idea.
Yeah.
He's not going to go easy.
I will say one interesting thing that I learned from a few years ago about the Bill Gates Foundation, because I like to see what people set forward as their goals and how they measure them and what the most important like KPIs are. And I read that the goal for that organization, or the thing that they measure, is this one sentence: how many lives can we save per $1?
That's pretty
like what a great metric.
Yeah, that is a really good metric. Yeah.
Now you can't use technology to do all this crazy stuff that's going to cost so much in infrastructure and might not work. Right? Now it forces you towards something else. There's another one that I like. I learned from an entrepreneur, very successful guy, that teaches others to be successful kind of solopreneurs and stuff. Noah Kagan. And he's got a very simplified model of like, you've got a product to sell. Like, who have you helped? Right? How many people have you helped? That's what he says. Like, I'm going to start a consulting business. I'm making this up, but I'm going to start a consulting business. And I'm going to be a therapist for married couples post-infidelity. That's a very niche target group, right?
Right.
Okay, great. So we could talk about scaling it and what technology you're going to use and where you're licensed to practice and if you need it and all that. But let me just ask you this. How many people have you actually helped?
Right.
If it's 3, that's okay.
Yeah.
But how did you, let's get into that. Like, what a great question. And what he does is he measures a startup's kind of goals and KPIs by saying, if you get a bunch of money and it's not yours, you're more likely to be more wasteful with it.
Totally.
So whether you get outside money or you bootstrap it or whatever you have to do, his measure is really interesting. It's speed to $1 profit. Yeah. Like, how amazing is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I still have to pay for internet. I mean, even if people will pay me $500 an hour to talk to me, I still have costs. So what is my cost? How quickly, right? And even if I get investment, like, how quickly am I going to cross over and say my company is profitable? I just made $1 and it took me 3 months to get there.
Yeah.
But now we can use the S word and figure out how to scale it and all that stuff, right? It's like very practical, actionable, just, like down to earth.
Cut out the bullshit. Right.
Yeah, right, like to the point.
Derek Sivers and CD Baby, if you know.
He's a friend.
Really?
I love him.
I love Derek Sivers.
He's one of my favorite humans on earth.
I know. So amazing. But CD Baby, he was doing the thing. And then people started asking him, could you do that for me?
And he goes,
I guess.
People think that this is what I am.
Yeah. He's like, I guess. Let me figure out how much to charge you.
Yeah.
It was amazing to work backwards like that. I'm already just solving this problem for me, and it works for me. Right. And it cost me this much money. So if you pay me this much, then I'm okay. Right. So that's CD Baby born. Right?
He's such a great, I mean, I could talk for too long about how much I love that guy, but he really, I really consider him a mentor, and ask his advice on things. And the thing that I really admire about him is that he's such a nonconformist thinker, but he's not just contrarian. He's not just like, I'm gonna walk on my hands because everyone else walks on their feet. He's just like, he questions things. And so even people like Tim Ferriss go to Derek.
Yeah, totally.
And other like well-known people will go to Derek. Like, here, this is just one example off the top of my head, and say, Derek, I need your help. How do I grow my business? And you know what Derek says first? This is brilliant.
Why do you want to grow your business?
Why do you have to grow your business?
Yeah.
Like, they hadn't even thought of that. And it was just a goal.
Right. Because I have to, why do you want to grow your business? And they go, I don't know, because I guess I'm Spoda.
Exactly. That's what you do, right?
Exactly.
Like, so great. Such a great like starting point and thinking differently about. And what I think it all comes back to is that this is very high level and maybe philosophical, but when people say they want to be happy, I think the word happy is just kind of one overused, but it's too generic. Like you can be happy because it's a beautiful day. You can be happy with your favorite glass of wine. You can be happy because you're going on a date with someone you're excited about. All that is fleeting.
Right.
But I think what people mean is they want to be fulfilled. And I think fulfillment comes from progress.
Right.
And progress simply means I feel like I'm better, whatever you are, right? Like better business person, better musician, better all the stuff that I do and all the labels that I have on me, right? I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a friend, all these things.
Sure.
That in at least some of these areas, I feel like I'm better now than I was before. I am a fulfilled person. That is my identity. So that's what I try to get across to people. And that's why I love those kinds of questions, because it's like, are you going to be more fulfilled because your business doubled?
Right.
Maybe, but at least let's ask the question.
Have a why there.
That's really what it comes down to, right?
Let's stop talking because you have to go.
I wish I didn't.
Yeah, that's okay. Wait 6 months to a year, come back. We'll keep talking. This was a blast. I love the idea of satisficing, you want to be able to zero in on the shit that you want to master. Everything else is just fluff. Just, do good enough at that.
Yeah. And are you still recording?
Yes.
So there is one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately because I do all the things that I do, and I preach this, and I feel I haven't been good at practicing it lately. And that is, some people kind of wear busyness as a badge of honor. Oh, I have to travel. I got 15 Zoom meetings. Totally. I have, and there's nothing wrong with being busy, but I think some people use busyness to seem important to other people. It's kind of validation.
Totally.
I'm the opposite. So I feel one of the phrases that sticks in my head is overwhelm is filter failure.
Right.
Totally. That's what I think of it. And so when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I say I'm busy, my sister is in town from California and I don't get to spend enough time with her. My friends are inviting me to stuff and I have to keep turning it down. I'm embarrassed for myself. I don't feel more important, right? I don't feel like anyone's looking at me and going, Steve's probably busy because he's so important. Right. Whether they are or not is irrelevant. But for me, I'm almost embarrassed because it's like, I'm not practicing what I preach and I need to get better at that. And the last couple of weeks it's just on my mind as I'm thinking, wow, I'm really busy. Am I busy doing the right stuff? Or am I treating this stuff that's either not urgent or not important and doesn't need to be done at all, or doesn't need to be done for 3 months, or I can outsource? And I'm treating it like it's the same as this thing that I have to do in 5 minutes. Like not everything deserves that attention. I should filter out the few things that matter versus the trivial many.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that myself as I preach it. I need to get better at practicing it.
I could talk forever I heard this, I think it was, used to be Brain Pickings, that blog.
Maria?
Yeah, Maria. Yeah. She said, never do a thing if it's only for prestige or money. That's stuck in my claw forever, right?
I really
like if
that.
You're just only doing this because it's prestigious or only for money. Now, if there's whys behind and they happen to be money and prestigious,
right.
Okay. The money and the prestige is like a necessary evil maybe, but you really want to do the thing like a TED Talk or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's up to you. That's your judgment call.
I would say, so for me, I love that she said it that way. For me, prestige doesn't, I actually don't want to be famous.
I know,
if
me neither.
If I could go viral and make it happen and have the success.
Rich, not famous. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I've thought that since I was a kid. Like I actively do not want to be a famous person that everybody recognizes and cares about who I'm dating or where I'm going.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Pay for security.
But the money part too, though, to that point, like, of course we need money to survive. And so the way that I've come to think about this is my career throughout the decades I've had like real jobs, I would say, like I've been employed by companies, but mostly I've been doing multiple things through my own company. And I love doing that. And I love being able to do that. And I think that I start thinking of my career as a series of projects. And a project could be as simple as this Unity song that I'm putting out, right? It could be as simple as somebody asked me to play at a charity event next week in front of 1,000 people. And so everything is a project. And so I have this mental checklist where money is on the list, but it's the last thing. So I think, should I do this? Okay, why should I do this? Am I going to make an impact? That's number one. Am I going to be working with smart people that I care about? Am I, and this goes along with impact, but could you just trade me for somebody else? Like if they want me to perform music, I do things like writing custom songs and doing sing-alongs. Not everybody does that. I will make a big impact. But if what they want is background music, I'm happy to just give them a DJ or a friend of mine that's just going to play. Right. And it's not that I'm too good for it. It's just that for me, need it. You don't need it. Yeah. It's not going to be the impact of me. It's just someone. They just need someone, right?
It could be a CD, for crying out loud.
Exactly. Yeah. Or just plug something in and have music playing. But whatever it is, it's not whether I'm too good. It's not about me being too good or having an ego. It's just the checklist is all of these things. And if I think I can make a positive impact, and it doesn't have to really, I never think of it as prestige, but I think of it as credibility. Right. I think credibility is okay because for people to listen and take advice from you that's well-meaning, you have to be credible because who are you? Like you're not going to take self-defense lessons from someone who gets their ass kicked every day. You're not going to have a trainer who's 200 pounds overweight, right? Credibility, but money is actually the last thing on my list. And I ask, am I making enough that I can still do this and be happy that I did it? Or can I break even? Or with some of the things that I do, it costs me money, but I'm happy to do it because of
spend that money because of
the trade that I'm making for the impact that I'm likely to make, right?
Love it. Well, let me let you go for real. Thank you, Steve Acho at steveacho.com. You need to go.
Thank you, my friend.
You have a good one. Let me go find my keys.
All right.
All right, I'm going to hit stop.
Okay.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.